Bene, 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 eccoci qua. Allora, buongiorno, ben ritrovati.
Good morning, welcome back. Welcome back to the second day of Biogas Italy 2026. After an intense, interesting day like yesterday, here we are for the second morning. Very rich, very intense as well. So let's get started with a message we received from the Minister of Agriculture for Sovereignty and Forestry. I would like to thank the organizers, all the attendants. I would like to thank the Italian Biogas Consortium and the President Piero Gattoni. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend in person, but I wanted to express my closeness and my appreciation for the work you have carried out over the past few years to guarantee energy and to guarantee soundness to the agricultural sector. Over the past few years, the Meloni government has worked to make sure that agriculture played a key role. It is a primary sector and cannot be considered as such only in words. So we have invested more than any other government in the history of our republic. But it wasn't only this that made the difference. The difference was made by putting back agriculture at the center of our intention as custodian of our land, by investing in sectors taking into account production, distribution, processing, the creation of economic added value that must be redistributed within the sector itself, thereby rewarding those who focus on the intrinsic qualitative value of the product. And data is confirming that we were right. Agriculture has become first in Europe, outperforming France and Germany. We obtained incredible results in terms of exports, 73 billion euro in terms of value. So as the National Statistical Institute has certified, this confirms our great ability and ability of our farmers and our entrepreneurs in promoting the sector, but also bearing witness to the investments made by the government. We have fought to make sure that the red tape was cut down. We are promoting the use of digestate, the use of certain fertilizers, to make sure that there is no waste. That's our ultimate goal, and also to bring down production costs. We have worked to cover the energy needs of our companies and our farms, guaranteeing support. As you know very well, the European farming sector has given up incentives for agricultural diesel oil. Italy is the only country that maintained it for almost 1 billion, but we also invested in solar energy without jeopardizing a process that had been triggered, causing damage to our primary production system. We have funded a call for proposal that allows farms to participate in this opportunity so that our agricultural system will benefit from 10 million in terms of energy benefits or benefits associated with the sale of the energy generated. There are many entrepreneurs that have embarked on this road. There are other models, like the ones you're represented, that have to be enhanced, and I'm saying that very clearly, especially for those who are using materials that come from our business environment. That's the key element that makes sure that we are promoting our country system as a whole. There are many things to consider, many points to raise. I will go into the details. We will have the chance to exchange views with my colleague, Minister Pichetto, and others, to launch a process that allows our country to generate energy and to not be held hostage of unstable procurement networks. Guarantee at the same time that we are respecting the environment and protecting employment. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Lollobrigida. So he reinforced what Minister Fratin said yesterday. So a sector of biogas and biomethane that is obviously at the center of our attention, also for the global energy crises that we are experiencing over the past few days, over the past few months. So to open the works for this second morning, I would like to call on stage the Vice President of CIB, Angelo Baronchelli. Good morning, Angelo, and welcome. The floor is yours. Good morning, and welcome you all. Well, first of all, I would like to wish all the best for Father's Day. Yesterday, I was thinking of the message I would have conveyed today. So, how many Biogas Italy meetings have we organized so far? 10. Well, all of them have been moments of reflection, moments of engagement. And this Biogas Italy is a milestone. So 20 years means that we are mature to exploit our perspectives for the future. So I have nothing more to add, really. Yesterday was the perfect day. I believe that the value of working together has been reinforced several times yesterday, as we have personally witnessed. Institutions, research centers, everyone have talked about CIB and the future of biogas rather than talking about themselves or their own achievements. I think this is key because it explains very clearly what the meaning of the past 20 years and of our work has been. The protagonist of this story is an enlightened man. Piero Gattoni was so good at leading us over the past few years. So, I would like to take stock of what we have done so far. We were born 20 years ago, just 6 farms, 6 companies um, that have established our consortium. But 10 years ago, um, at the end of 2012, after the installation of the first plants, we began thinking of what would have happened in a few years from that time. So the day after, we began asking ourselves a number of questions. After the first round, the first 10 years, there was some freedom. But then we began thinking of biogas as something that maybe needed more sustainability. So we thought about double crops or rotating crops. We put lots of efforts in all this, especially in close connection with agriculture and animal breeding, because we were fully aware that agriculture must, first of all, feed us, must feed people. How to optimize the underlying processes, though, not to have any waste? Well, Piero, I remember that we always said, well, it's always been like that in agriculture. You, of course, had to feed the cows, and to feed them, we would actually use biomass. Then the technical and strategic vision stepped in, and Stefano Bozzetto must be acknowledged for his
Se
role.
ne è parlato, ti direi, emergente, sembra emergere tutto il valore, Stefano, che tu hai fatto in questi 10
Everything you
anni.
have done over the
A
past
volte
15 years,
anche
Stefano,
il linguaggio di Stefano o comunque le proposte di Stefano non sempre venivano comprese,
must
perché
be
Stefano voleva
recognized.
veramente
Stefano was
darti il
always
no
ahead
in questa
of all of
transizione,
us.
però è stato
With respect to his vision,
uno
so
degli elementi
sometimes
più
the
importantissimi che ha
suggestions
saputo
he came up
cardinare
with,
proprio nella
or the
giustificazione
ideas
di
he
questo
had,
piano.
were not that easy to understand, but he was our true guide
Vorrei
in this
fare
new
un
scenario.
piccolo excursus anche
If I may, I would like to make a short overview of the results that we have
in
achieved
questi anni.
over the past
Dal centro
years.
riconoscimento, riparto da Stefano,
I will
il tema
start from
dell'ecosistema.
Stefano once again because
Questo
the center
ecosistema
of everything is
significa
biogas done right.
innanzitutto che
This
ci
is the
abbiamo
distinctive
iniziato a
feature
costruire tutta
on which CIB has built
questa ecosistema, una
its
storia che vi ho
journey. So,
raccontato
the
in
story that we have
coinvolgimento
told
anche
you
della
about,
parte
the
politica del
involvement we
centro di
had
gestione,
with
non
the
siamo mai stati
institutions,
come non voluto il termine, gli speculatori
we
del
never
fatto. Noi ci siamo
speculated,
sempre
and sorry
mossi
for using
come
this word.
parte di un sistema
We've
che doveva
always
essere
felt part of a
comunque
system
basato sul
that had to
valore di
be
fare le
based
cose bene.
anyway on the value
Oggi in
of
effetti
doing
si sta
things
perdendo
well, so to
questo
have things done
passaggio in
right.
Europa, no? Quindi
This
si sta
concept
parlando
is
di
now
biogas e anche
accepted in
di
Europe as
biogas
well.
forse
People
veniamo
are
un
talking
po'
about biogas done
diciamo
right.
così
We have exported this concept outside our context as well.
sottolineo un po' di temi. Ieri si è parlato di
Yesterday,
PMG.
we talked about PMG.
Vogliamo rimarcare che il PMG è una misura che è stata pensata dalla
PMG
CIB,
is a
che
measure
è
that
stata
was
costruita
designed by
proprio
CIB,
nelle
that was
associazioni
developed with the
per
support of the
puntare in modo
associations,
particolare di Ettore
with
Prandini,
the
che ci
support
sarebbe
of
questo nuovo
Ettore Prandini,
meccanismo
so
d'onere.
the
Vi dico anche che
average
qualcuno
guaranteed
oggi
price.
lavora come
So
riferimento
some
per
people
fare
refer
aumentare
to it
il
as
consenso
provision that
anche
shouldn't be given up. I see Alessandro here in the room. Confagricoltura also played a role. But there's one more thing I would like to say.
è stato anche di coalizzare le
One
associazioni
of the
come rappresentate dalla
characteristics of
SIAB, che
CIB
saranno presenti
was that of joining forces
ecco, uno dei
with
grandi
all
valori
the
che
main
noi
partners. This
vogliamo
is one of our
qui
biggest
avere,
values.
ci vogliamo riconoscere, ed è anche aver messo al centro il Biogas fatto bene l'interesse
Biogas
della
done right
comunità,
is at the
l'interesse del
center of
paese.
the interest of the farming sector and the country. So the development of
Proprio
this
PMG
technology is key. I will go back to the guaranteed average price to say
ha
that
pensato una
PMG, the
transizione
shorthand we used to
che
define
ormai
this
è anche
price, was used
richiamato
as a
anche dagli
transition
studi
instrument because the regulatory framework wasn't there to have the existing plants converted into something else. So the meaning of the guaranteed average price is based on this assumption, and also yesterday's needs that have been illustrated. It was extremely necessary to have a continuity. It is a transition measure that will allow the next 5 years to give a clear direction to the prospects of biogas plants. As far as possible, they will be converted to biomethane. If we didn't manage to, we would make sure they stay active somehow. But I wanted to stress once again that this measure was an idea CIB came up with.
altro punto che sottolineo, ne abbiamo
One
parlato
more
prima,
point I would like to stress
facility,
is
qui vengono utilizzati tutti i
the
fondi
facility
del PNRR,
for the funds allocated by the Next Generation EU. I'm addressing all the industrial partners that were terrified, thinking of how they would have managed to build 200 or 300 plants in a year, because we have no magic wand, of course. Despite our goodwill, would be impossible. So not wasting the opportunity of having conversions and at the same time guaranteeing certainties to the investors, but also to us as companies. Well, I think this is a measure that has been pointed out by us many times. We are not, of course, asking to be given credit for it, but we obtained a structured measure whereby we can continue along this road.
La promessa ieri del ministro.
The promise made yesterday by the minister, that is to say that we will work right away on another measure to guarantee incentives for biomethane,
No, doppia.
is something I would like to bring to your attention as well. Well, Piero, I'm here in a twofold capacity. I represent the industrial partners, but I always acted in the interest of the sector. And what I always told our companies, our members, is that by doing so, we also promote the interests of the industrial partners, because we paved the way so that our industrial partners could think of the future. So the promise made by the minister yesterday that they will work on a new measure is an additional incentive that we will need to give meaning to the great efforts that we have put this year into realizing everything that we have achieved. So the need to build new plants. Another important point I would like to stress: careful, patient work carried out by CIB, connection with the users of biomethane, the great work that we have carried out over the past few years.
Quindi
Bring into the world of industry the value of a fuel that might replace fossil fuels.
Mona che ha aiutato.
The work carried out by Simona that helped us with dialogue with these institutions. And I think that Article 5 bis is one of the results that should be highlighted. It's one of the achievements that needs being mentioned. Piero and I, a few years ago, after a Biogas Italy meeting, we were thinking about extending the dedicated withdrawal up to 500 cubic meters, and then Pierre and I said no, that would mean missing an opportunity, because we must think with a 15-year vision. When in 15 years this support measure will come to an end for biomethane, the market will have to be there. So building the market with the industry as well is one of the tasks that it will have to perform over the next few years. So the regulatory framework, this Article 5 bis, the possibility of selling the molecule directly to the end users, paper mills or steel plants, all users that cannot be electrified. Well, this is a very important strategic purposes that we always have to bear in mind. Last point.
La dinamica.
The dynamics of the market has changed as well. The first round was almost exclusively engaging farms. Then investment funds have joined, other companies, technology partners, that act as in-betweens between the world of farming and the processing of biomass or any other residues. Well, the CIB has tried to regulate this process rather than passively accepting it. Once again, at the center of everything we did, there's the biogas done right. We are not questioning that there might be people interested in investing in agriculture, but we have set out the conditions. The conditions is that the ultimate meaning must be the biogas done right. So once again, Piero, that's a big deal. So I must say it's really great.
Quindi chiudo, no?
So I
Dicendo
will
che
conclude by saying
possiamo essere
that we
soddisfatti, come
can be
dice Piero,
happy, we
no?
can be
Del
proud,
lavoro che
Piero, of the work we have
Piero ha
carried out.
fatto, il consiglio del
Piero
CIB
led
sempre
the
ha
board
seguito
of CIB,
la
so he
lungimiranza
always
comunque
supported
dello
the
sviluppo,
vision of the world that we
in
represent.
qualche modo non irrealizzabili nei fatti, no? Quindi un grandissimo lavoro di
So,
costruzione
a
che
great
porterà
work.
al giorno di ieri
Just
per
to go back
avvenire
to
un
yesterday's
lavoro
meeting,
con tanti puntini che
I
poi
saw many
si
dots that
collegano,
would
quindi
eventually connect. Legambiente,
quindi non
FAO.
siamo più il mondo
So
agricolo
we are no
classico,
longer the
comunque
farming world that
siamo
focuses
un pezzo
on
dello
their own
specchio
interests. We're a piece of a
ancora
bigger
più
system,
grande che ad esempio
way more
riguarda
important, which
l'energia,
has at
ma
the
essenzialmente
center very important issues: energy, environment,
e del mio paese.
building
Credo che sia
perspectives for our
questo
country.
un
Because,
po' il
Piero,
senso
this is the
di
meaning
quello che
of
noi abbiamo
our
sempre
journey. We have
interessato
never put at the center of everything did the interests of those who had already realized the plans, because the Italian Biogas Consortium might also mean, well, those who are in, those who are out are out. No, we are focusing on innovation. So we are focusing on the role of industrial partners, and I would like to thank them all, because over the past few years they have given an extraordinary contribution to innovation.
Promessa del ministro di ieri,
Even yesterday's promises, 5 billion biomethane that we can produce. How can we produce it? Well, we can produce it by connecting all the dots to make sure that this can be done and that this can be done well. So would like to thank Filippo once again for attending. I think he is one of the dots that has been connected, and thank you very much. We're not working for the interest of biogas. We're not working for farming only. We are working for the interest of the country. Thank you, Angelo Baronchelli.
Buona seconda giornata.
So we celebrate with an embrace, a hug. It's a bigger community. It's becoming richer and bigger.
20 anni. Allora, continuiamo con i numeri.
Let's continue with the numbers, because the numbers are important. Analyses are important. We always start from facts. I would like to call to the podium Lorella Rossi from CIB. Good morning, Lorella. So we would like to hear from you what's the production capacity of Italian regions. So numbers, data once again. Good morning.
It is always a great honor to be here. It's a great emotion, and my presentation is on. And going straight to the point, So yesterday and this morning we talked about our journey and reaching this goal of Biogas done right followed certain steps, because after the first estimate made, which is to the left of the screen, we actually assessed our path after the estimates we had made. And one of the most important things is that we are in favor of integration crops. 10 years ago, we were told, well, with the second crop, you damage soil. So we had to explain that it was rather the reverse, and we did so by involving experts at the European level, and we talked to the European institutions, and we did so by involving Stefano, as well as an international team of experts in the field of bioenergy who confirmed scalability outside of Italy. Of course, our estimates were 8 billion cubic meters per year. Of course, we need to receive European approval in whatever we do. Another important step consisted in asking ourselves, again 10 years ago, at the time we were wondering if gas would be needed in the future, because at the time this seemed not to be the case. I mean, that gas would still be needed. But since then, gas resumed its leading role or important role at the European level. And Gas for Climate confirmed the possibility of producing biomethane. And this study is at the root of the projections of REPowerEU with 35 billion of standard cubic meters. So why is this step important? Well, we now come to our outlook. So we ended the 2022 calls for proposals, and in this slide I have highlighted capacity for farming plants. So 2 billion of standard cubic meters, a bit more than 1 billion from reconversions, and a bit less than 1 billion coming from new plants. And you see in the chart to the right the distribution according to Italian regions. So what do we see here? As expected and hoped, in the northern Italian regions, you will see mainly reconversions of pre-existing plants, while in the center and the south of Italy, what is more common is new plants, new systems. So we are ready to increase production of biomethane thanks to the new plants. Yesterday we heard what GSE had to say about these plants. Over 500 are in farms, 50 are already operational, 320 informed the authorities that they have started building these plants, and we hope that this number is going to increase before June. So what was the other issue to address here? SNAM, because it had to prepare for the future, 2030, 40 and 50, launched an in-depth study to assess the availability of biomass at the provincial level. And it is involved the CIB right from the beginning, also to try and understand and adopt reliable criteria consistent with the Biogas done right approach. And not just anaerobic digestion was considered, but also gasification. But in this context, we are speaking about only about anaerobic digestion. You see here the different topics that were considered: animal husbandry effluents, crop waste, agro-industrial residues, sequential crops, and flows coming from waste, organic waste, depuration, sludge, etc. As far as gasification is concerned, we also considered different types of waste, mainly forestry waste, wood waste, etc. To conduct this study, which can be downloaded from the websites of SNAM and from the websites of the CIB. So to carry out this study, what approach was adopted? Well, the important thing was not to overestimate data. So the approach is what you see on the slide, except that a consultation was carried out with the main bibliographic sources that were available, which I'm not going to list, but we started from the theoretical potential, so biomass, which is that a given specific activity produces, then the technical potential was considered, so that amount that it can actually be collected. For instance, in the case of animal husbandry waste, if you think, I don't know, an open air breeding farm, etc., what can actually be collected. Then sustainable potential. What do we mean by that? Is considering the materials to be used, also considering that there are other virtues, chains, other sectors that in part already use this flow of waste. Imagine some sub-products that are already used, for instance, for animal feed production. Based on this sustainable potential, then the available potential was estimated with growing percentages over time. So an approach that was very specific and careful. And this is the result. To the left, and you see, no, sorry, to your right, you see the total amount, over 15 billion standard cubic meters that can be produced by 2050, including anaerobic digestion and gasification. But then if we look at the chart, sorry, the image to the left, focusing on anaerobic digestion, almost 8 billion are confirmed for 2010 and 30. That become almost 10 in 2040 and exceed 11 at 2050. In 2050, and in the map of Italy, you see that there are different colors concerning the Italian provinces. The highest color, the stronger color, is where a greater amount of biomethane can be produced, because of course maps were not developed by focusing on the current situation, but we are talking about what can be actually produced in terms of biomethane in practical terms. How do we get these figures? Well, we see from what biomass we obtain that 8, 10, 11 billion. Well, animal husbandry waste, a bit less than 1 billion, from 1.5 to 2 billion. Second, crops and integration crops, crop waste and sub-products, agri-food sub-products, and there is also a small amount coming from waste collection. If we look to the right of the slide, what is evident is the role of integration crops. That is why in the process of validation of biogas done right, it is extremely important to look at this step, because at first we were starving the world. This is what we were accused of, but in actual fact, this notion was not real, because we know that bioenergy can be fully integrated with food production. Here you see the potential of the first 20 Italian regions in terms of the provinces with the greatest potential. You see that we are speaking about Brescia, Mantova, Pavia, Verona, Cuneo, Bari. The first 5 are in the north, Bari is in the south. So together they have 53% of the potential within 2030. The other chart ambitious projections at 2050. But let us take a further step ahead. Of course, we represent the farming sector. And what do we do? Well, we process the provincial data, aggregating it by region and considering only the biomass that can be processed by our plants, so biomass but not waste, so animal husbandry waste, crops, farming residues, and agri-food subproducts, byproducts. And you look at the distribution by region. Well, the trend showed by this chart, it reminds you of a previous chart. If you look at this previous chart, in fact, you see to your left the biomass potential, and to the right where the plants that are going to be built based on the 2002 decree are going to be built. So entrepreneurial initiatives were developed in the regions where precisely there is an availability of biomass. And we even took a further step forward because, of course, we were curious at that point. So what did we do? Well, even though this transition period is far from easy, we estimated the current production, so from the current situation, we summed the production coming from the 2018 plants and the expected production following the implementation of Decree 2022, considering 100% of the capacity of the new plants and 50% of the capacity of plants resulting from reconversions, starting from the assumption that all plants are going to double their production. And we placed this expected production. We compared it with the situation that may take place by 2030, and you see that we have come up with development margins. So there is room for continuing along these lines with the new decree in order to reach the goals that we have set for ourselves and that the EU and Italy are asking of us. I would like to conclude with a couple of slides. So we have a further capacity for development by 2030, and of course, since we have a further capacity, this sector can further develop by 2040 and 50. So let us continue along these lines, let us move forward. And I would like to end with these reflections that according to which entrepreneurial development actually took place in the regions where there is material to be used. Of course, every plant can use the available material, but of course there is room for improvement and development for the future. Yes, we can expect developments because our digesters eat every day, so if we do not feed them, we're not going anywhere. But what has come up and what has emerged is a further confirmation of the role, the protagonist role to be played by farming, because the actual growing phase is essential. If there is an increase in the production of biomethane, it means that in parallel there's also an increase in digestate that we must use in the best possible way. So these stages, we know well, are the responsibility, of course, of farming activities. So the final reflection, also getting back to what Angelo was saying, is that only the right combination between farming and industrial entrepreneurship can be the key to truly set up new plans in a balanced way while respecting the uniqueness of every local context. And this is all I wanted to say. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Lorella Rossi. Please sit here. We're now going to the stage, the next guest to continue with this analysis and this discussion. So this morning we have with us the General Manager of the Agriculture and Food Sovereignty Ministry, Emilio Gatto. Thank you, Director, for being here with us. So, you have the task of continuing this journey based on what we also heard. So, the central role to be played by farming in this sector and chain and vision. Well, first of all, I wish to thank you for inviting me because it's always a great pleasure being here with you. And as Mrs. Rossi was saying before, such a lively audience. Um, this topic, as we know, is a theme that has become absolutely crucial at this moment in time, and it is extremely urgent to address the issues of agri-energy production in an international context, which is marked by great geopolitical instability and by a race towards crazy competition in the grabbing of energy sources. So we must really do our best to address these strategic issues in order to help our country, as the report showed us. So biomethane, and as a consequence, the farming sector have and must play, well, do play and must play a central role in this overall strategy for our country. And in the case of farming, we are talking about a sector which is marked by a double responsibility, producing biomass and therefore producing in an essential, contributing in an essential way to the production of electric power and biomethane in this case. And on the other, though, also it has the responsibility of protecting the environment and reaching climate goals. So the value of farming activities is very, very high. But I think that in order to reach these goals, we need to accompany and support this sector with consistent and integrated policies. So we must continue to work as institutions and therefore as ministries precisely to reach these goals, following specific paths. I mean, they are all important, equally important, of course, and I'm not going to list them in order of priority, but quite simply, the first thing is the topic of skills and the possibility of disseminating innovation. As we know, energy transition is not something that occurs automatically. It requires technical knowledge, management, skills, and as we heard from the words of the Vice President, it also requires a strategic and entrepreneurial vision. So these are all qualities and skills that unfortunately not all farm companies possess, nor necessarily farmers. So we must support farms with the right policies and with information, with training, precisely to make farmers understand what are the potential, what is the potential of this sector from an economic standpoint, and help them see opportunities for investment, stimulating investment precisely in this field. And I'm moving on to the second, let's say, aspect, which is the aspect of incentives, in other words, promoting investment in this sector. And so I'm talking about the modernization of the production system, which should be stimulated in this direction. And as we know, as Minister Lollobrigida told us in his presentation, the Italian farming sector is really marked by unrivaled achievements, but we know that we still have huge room for improvement in terms of effectiveness in using these inputs, and we possess some essential tools in order to promote the development of investments in this sector. First of all, the great CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, which is this system that is essential for our sector, but then there are also instruments provided by farming, agriculture 4.0, up to the investments and incentives for mechanization. So there is a mix of tools that we are using and that which we will continue and must continue to use precisely to stimulate technological innovation in this field and therefore promote the efficiency and effectiveness in using farm wastes in our farms. And then the world of politics and policy makers and those who implement policies in Italy, of course, must stimulate all this. And there is also another aspect, no, is that of having rules that are as simple as streamlined as possible, and then regulatory consistency. We do know that we have some criticalities, critical aspects in our system, and we bureaucrats do. Well, we are responsible for some things and we should set things right. We heard about the problem of managing digestate, which is essential for this sector and which is something that we need to address, just as we must address the fact that there is lack of consistency between the rules focusing on biomass to be used for energy production and the regulations which regulate the farming use of byproducts. And so there are some rules that we need to amend because we must provide a consistent framework to the benefit of entrepreneurs who make investments, and we must grant regulatory certainty. We must have no blind spots in our regulatory sector, of course. And the fourth and last strand, or let's say direction to be followed, that I would like to present to you is the need for ensuring high sustainability standards. I think that the production of biomethane gives great guarantees in this sense, and we have looked at the importance of how to manage livestock manure, how to ensure the fertility of soils. So these are all aspects that are important for sustainability and that grant stability to it. Then, of course, there is a regulatory framework to be addressed, and this provides us with a picture that in actual fact provides us with certainty. Of course, sustainability must not just be seen from the standpoint of the environment, but also we must in some way make this possible as well as compatible with the needs of entrepreneurs. So, as we said, we mustn't excessively weigh on companies, especially small ones, farms that are unable to incur and pay for certain costs that are imposed on them by certification systems. And unless we make life easy to these farms, enterprises, by adopting simple rules. This is another important aspect, and I think that with the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Agriculture is working with the Ministry of the Environment. We're trying to simplify certification, and I think that the Ministry of the Environment will not be against the idea of finding further ways to simplify things in order to promote sustainability certifications in general. We have worked a lot on these topics in the past 1.5 years, and already so many facilities and benefits have been introduced in this system to the advantage of farms and small companies, but there is still a lot of work to do, although things are progressing. And I would like to conclude by saying that the more general aspect to be considered is that of the territorial and sector chain dimension. I think that biomethane is an outstanding opportunity for a farm, but it cannot be so on an individual level. We must create a system to generate opportunities for a set of companies. So what is important is create infrastructure in this country. So cooperation between farms and utilities and the industrial system. I think all this is essential, on the one hand, for entrepreneurial growth and development, and also for territorial development, local development. I don't want to sound too rhetorical, but in rural areas and in remote areas, if you do not have an industrial and economic fabric, there is no opportunity for survival, and you are aware of the fact that in these remote areas population is just absent. People just leave those areas. So we must create relationship and plan activities at the local level, because this can be beneficial to the growth of an entrepreneurial system with the aim of revitalizing remote territories. Of course, these are complicated, processes, and it's not just something that you can reach or implement easily. But I think that this sector can truly contribute strongly to this end. And last but not least, it is also important to highlight how energy transition represents a great opportunity, as we were saying, for the farming sector. The farming sector must integrate the production of goods, produce, of course, this is our main mission, as we all know, but integrating income with other sources, such as the production of energy, I think, is something that grants an increasingly central role to farms, allowing farming entrepreneurs to become more relevant in the national economic system as a whole. And it can really grant true centrality to farming. We've seen that biomass is something that we have, at least, up until 2050, according to the forecasts made. We are, quite serene. So we do have potential, we have the tools, and new ones will be passed in terms of laws, regulations, etc. So we must follow and support farmers. We must do things right, as your trademark says. So we must do things right and do so together, and be able to integrate the technical skills and knowledge that we possess with a mix of policies dedicated to this sector, and which must be effective and efficient at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Gatto. Thank you, Mrs. Rossi. And thank you again for sharing with us this vision, which somehow, further clarifies what we heard yesterday from the Ministry of the Environment. So you've heard the farming side this morning, but let us continue by analyzing what the public opinion thinks, what the players in the sector are thinking about all these things, with an analyst who is one of our cherished guests, Lorenzo Pregliasco, who is here with us again. Good morning.
La immaginiamo molto.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you are very busy due to the forthcoming referendum, but tell us about what you have achieved over the past year. Thank you. Thank you truly. I would like to thank Biogas Italy. Well, just a few data regarding the perception of decision makers. So we have carried out an analysis on a sample of institutional local decision makers
le regioni italiane per vedere diciamo, anche quanto è allineato il percepito
to
rispetto a quello dei cittadini.
understand what's the perception of decision makers, how aligned it is with that of citizens, because we have carried out an analysis on a survey on the Italian public opinion as a whole. So let's start from here. So the viewpoints on biogas.
Cominciando da un elemento direi significativo che è il livello di informazione.
First of all, information level. So we asked our respondents, and you can see the sample of decision makers and the general population compared here. So we asked them how informed they believe they are with respect to biogas. What came out of this survey is that the information level is higher amongst decision makers compared with the general population. That's reassuring and not surprising at all. Half of the decision makers that have been interviewed consider themselves to be pretty informed. The others considered to be poorly informed. 17% of the general population believed they were informed. From information to impact. What's the impact of biogas on the economic and social development of agriculture and the country? That was the question. This is the answer of the decision makers that we have interviewed, representing all political parties, all regions of the country. 79% of the respondents said that the impact is positive. 29% very positive.
Di nuovo con la popolazione generale di questo dato. Andiamo avanti, eccoci qua. L'impatto è considerato
The impact is considered positively by the decision makers, 79%, but also by the general population. 6 Italian citizens in 10 consider the impact of biogas to be quite or very positive, vis-à-vis 3% that have a negative view of the sector. So a positive impact for decision makers and for citizens.
favorevole, quindi riscontriamo anche sulla costruzione di impianti per l'automazione di
Then
questo è sempre stato un che abbiamo sondato.
we asked if the respondents were in favor of building plants for biogas production. 37% have expressed their appreciation, saying that they were very in favor. And there's a substantial alignment between general population and decision makers when it comes to the expression of interest in building plants for biogas production.
Critico e diciamo di riflessione che emerge dalla nostra ricerca riguarda
There's a key element regarding relationship with the territory, with citizens.
elemento chiave
We can see here a key element is that of transparency.
trasparenza dei progetti verso la cittadinanza
Transparency of projects
degli impianti. Qui osserviamo
for the
come
realization of plans.
politici
Amongst the decision makers that we have interviewed, 17%
di informazione e trasparenza
consider
oggi come diciamo
information and transparency to be high or pretty high. Conversely, most of the respondents expressed lower values. 55% said that the level of information and transparency is pretty low, and an additional 27% saying it was very low.
di maggiore trasparenza e di maggiore informazione dei cittadini e delle comunità locali in relazione alla realizzazione di impianti
So this is
non c'è solo questo elemento
not the only element that is more qualitative. There are also some specific actions.
cuore della questione, quali possono essere le azioni, vedete, migliori
What
per
can the best
portare
actions be to bring benefits to the community? That's another
vedete
question that we have
più
asked.
scuro le risposte
So in
dei
dark
decisori
blue,
politici,
the
meno sono le
answers
risposte
given
dei
by
cittadini
decision makers.
che
In light blue, the
due elementi
answers
sono
given by the general
sono il
population.
primo
There's 2 points to
che
raise here.
sostanzialmente
First of
concorda
all,
abbastanza bene
the picture is
questo
pretty aligned. We're
elemento
going to see in a
e
minute.
dall'altra parte ci sono
And
invece
then
un paio di
there
situazioni
are
nelle
a
quali
couple of
percezione
situations where there's a
cittadina
different
e
perception between
insieme
citizens and decision
decisionali.
makers.
Ci sono le prime due voci, quindi
The
incentivi
first two
agli agricoltori per l'uso di
items, incentives
quest'agro
to farmers
e
for the
sul
use
secondo
of
posto vedete il
digestate,
finanziamento di
and
iniziative per il
secondly,
territorio,
funding
funzionamenti diretti che raccolgono una percentuale rilevante di consensi
for
sia nel
businesses
territorio
that are building the
sia nella
plants.
popolazione in generale. Sono le
And
due
these
risposte
are the two
più
answers that
indicate.
are
C'è poi un altro
picked more
indicatore
frequently by the
che
respondents. There's another
posso
indicator
creare dati simili.
here
Infatti ci sono
that
alcune
shows
regioni
similar data
dove
between decision
la
makers and
promozione
general
delle
population.
percentuali di
So,
monitoraggio della gestione
promotion
pubblica
of
nelle comunità
monitoring
locali e il dissesto
programs with
della
the
trasparenza
managers of
nella
plants and local
partecipazione e
communities. And
informazione
here, once again,
delle comunità
the
di
question of
ricerca.
transparency and
Ci sono
information
poi
plays a
un
role.
paio di
Then there are a
consigli
couple of
positivi
actions, more
la
specifically
priorità nell'assunzione dei residenti,
priority
allora
in
il 29% e il
hiring
finanziamento alle attività
residents
il 25% sono
for
più
managing the
indicati ai
plants and
decisori
improving the road network. Well,
che
these are
non
questions that
esattamente
are
alle popolazioni
dearer to decision
che
makers
abbiamo
rather
visto.
than to
Al
the general
contrario, i
population.
cittadini rispetto al territorio sono
Conversely,
tendenzialmente
citizens are more
più
sensitive to the penultimate
facciano
point you see
grandi
here, so
investimenti
improving the energy distribution systems. And at a
il
pretty big
7%
gap,
tra i
27%
cittadini e il
amongst the general
16%
population,
tra i
and
decisori
6% decision
finalmente.
makers.
In chiusura,
To
vedete
conclude,
questo
the last point you
questo
see,
programma di educazione ambientale alle scuole
environmental education
il 10%
programs to be
per
carried out in schools,
l'ambientale,
11%,
9%
general
per
population,
i
4%
decisori.
decision makers.
Vado verso la conclusione
To
di questa
conclude,
presentazione che naturalmente fornisce l'opportunità di fornire a
and
voi
of course,
degli
this
ascoltatori
presentation is
un
aimed
contesto
at giving you some context.
viste le questioni di cui si occupano queste giornate, con una slide
This is
conclusiva
the
che
final
riguarda
slide
il
regarding
Biogas. In
policies
particolare direi il quadro
and more
normativo
specifically the regulatory
generale e dal
framework.
secondo tratto di nuovo un dato
Once again, there's
specifico.
something very clearly emerging from
Abbiamo
this.
chiesto ai
We
decisori
asked decision makers, political decision
nazionali
makers,
e
national and regional, all over
europei
Italy,
di
all
considerare
political
l'attuale
parties, to
regolamentazione del
consider
gas
the
in Italia
current
per vedere
regulation
se
of biogas
in
in Italy.
conseguenza e
And
se
we asked our
fosse
respondents
necessario
if
un nuovo
we
quadro
consider it
legislativo
necessary
per il
to have a
biogas.
new legislative framework for
Nessuno ha
biogas.
risposto di no,
No one said
nessuno ha
no.
risposto nel senso di un'attuale
No one
regolamentazione
said
adeguata, adatta e sufficiente. C'è un
that
24%
the
di quadro
regulation is
ipotizzato
suitable and
che
sufficient.
non ha saputo esprimersi sul punto, ma come vedete la grandissima parte degli
1/4 of the sample said they didn't know, but
ci
the two
dice
top answers
che
collected the highest
necessaria
number of
una
answers.
nuova
Um,
profilo legislativo
so a
per il
new
biogas.
legislative profile is needed for biogas, and
Dice è
53% say that it is a
sono
priority.
particolarmente convinta
So they're
di necessità
particularly
di
convinced
nuovi strumenti
that new legislative
per
instruments are needed
aggiornare il quadro
to
legislativo.
update the legislative framework around biogas. 23%
Consiglio
said yes,
necessario un quadro
that they
legislativo,
consider it necessary to have a new legislative framework, but it is not a priority.
questa
To
presentazione.
conclude this presentation, I'm going to show you in passing the methodological note. We interviewed 40 decision makers from all Italian regions, regional councillors, MPs, senators of all political areas.
Stesso caso le evidenze che ho mostrato in precedenza, mentre il dato, eccolo qua, sui cittadini, si riferisce all'indagine che abbiamo presentato lo scorso anno a Biogas Italia.
And this is the 1,000 interviews that were carried out on a representative sample of the general population. To conclude, the survey shows a couple of indications that are of certain interest. First of all, there's a positive attitude towards biogas amongst citizens and the general population. There are two needs in particular that are highlighted: greater transparency towards citizens and their communities, and the need of adjusting the legislative framework. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie a lei, Pagliasco, e grazie alle Trend come sempre per la partecipazione
Thank you. Would like to thank you, Trent, for the professionalism
principali evidenze emerse
and expertise. We've seen the main evidence emerging from the survey. Let's talk about it with our next guests.
quindi li vediamo subito sul palco. C'è il presidente della
Two are already here.
della regione Lombardia, Giulio Gallera. Buongiorno e
The
benvenuto.
Giulio Gallera,
C'è anche la responsabile dell'area innovazione e
the
transizione
person
digitale
in charge of
e alta transizione energetica dell'ANCI,
ANCI, Antonella Galli. Good morning
e ben arrivata.
and welcome.
Felice, grazie, ben arrivata. Non so se è già arrivato anche l'onorevole Gusmeroli, no?
I don't know if
Subito a collegarci con i nostri
Mr. Honorable Gusmeroli is here. And we have connected live the President of the Agricultural Committee of the Senate, Luca De Carlo. Good morning, Senator, and welcome. Good morning, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to give the floor to you, following on the lines of what Prayasco said from you, Trent, the need for a new regulatory framework. So what are the strategies, what are the actions that according to you are needed to help the companies not lose the positive lever that has been promoted by the National Recovery and Resilience Plan? Well, it's a very interesting question because it is strictly linked to the perception that we have of how good plants like this are. These plants represent something that, of course, have an impact also on pollution. We must make sure that the use of digestate is promoted because it is extremely important for the quality of soil and for emissions. Any farmer knows about the importance of sustainability. The importance of soil must not be forgotten. It is one of the challenges that we have for the future. Water and soil will be our priorities. Forgetting about demagogy and ideology, we won't go anywhere. We need to prove that we need to have education. I have extraordinary examples in my region of biogas and biomethane production, thanks to the great commitment of the farms that were so good at communicating, especially with decision makers. It's way easier to have a negative slogan be disseminated rather than explaining the benefits of a plant like this. So it is very important to focus on communication. Communication is a winning card today because if we can communicate properly, decision makers will be put in a position of having rules that are impactful and that are useful for the operators, but are of course very well understood by the public opinion. If we manage to communicate properly and in a useful manner, we can avoid the NIMBY syndrome, the not in my backyard syndrome. For example, concentrating the droppings in only in one place and through digestate have them scattered on the soil in a more accurate manner, considering the needs of the soil, is a favor we are doing to agriculture and to the farming practices in general. We must first of all realize the importance of this system and to make sure that these rules are feasible and reusable. Nuclear side, this is the only opportunity we have to become more independent from fossil fuels, because we know that other renewables don't have the same continuity in terms of intensity, so we must work on this. So I've always given my availability to grant my support because I've always been convinced of the soundness of these projects. So farming is no longer in opposition to the environment, quite the contrary. The environment and environmental care has been a mantra for agriculture. I'm fed up with that rhetoric that is blaming agriculture. Enough with it. It's something that we cannot tolerate any longer. And today, thanks to those who probably have been accused of um, pursuing their own interests, well, this is not true. It's important to have a big alliance between consumers, operators, farmers, and those who produce biogas. So it is not by accident that the perception has changed totally over the past few years, especially amongst decision makers, amongst those who have elaborated on this question. It is important to communicate well. Once again, I would like to reiterate this point, and I confirm my support for short-term policies to incentivize the use of these resources, but also to continue along the lines of what the government has done so far. So thinking of modern agriculture to be possible, thinking of agriculture to be done through innovation, and to make sure that young people are attracted by the fact that agriculture can be done with innovative instruments, rather than telling them that agriculture should stay something old and ancient. This is one of the examples where policymaking should not think of using incentives only to do a favor to those who have a plan that have made as choice. This is a strategic choice that our country must make. So to have greater independence, to support the green transition, and to do so with the greatest environmental care. I've been chairman of the Environment Committee for 4 years now. No one has ever said that I was wrong. What we are proposing is something that Europe is doing as well, a total change of paradigm. And this change of paradigm must go hand in hand with new measures. I see that the president of Coldiretti is sitting there, so I would like to welcome him and thank him for the extraordinary work he does, helping us also becoming more aware of the importance not only of agriculture but also of doing agriculture in a modern and attractive manner, guaranteeing cost effectiveness, which is the basic assumption of every entrepreneurial activity, also agricultural activities that are exposed to many other factors. And especially in our country, that has a strong penchant for exports, it makes us unique and it makes us feel proud of what we do. So I believe that we can work on this, that we can work well on this with no ideologies and investing resources, setting goals and working to get there.
Grazie Senatore De Carlo.
Thank you, Senator
Grazie
De Carlo.
per il suo intervento e a questo
Thank you
punto spostiamo
for your
il
contribution.
nostro collegamento dal
Now,
Senato alla
from the
Camera
Senate to
verso
the House of Parliament, lower House of Parliament, from the Production Activity, Trade and Tourism Committee, we should have Mr. Honorable Swery.
Vediamo se in qualche istante arriva eccolo qua. Buongiorno onorevole,
There he is.
benvenuto a Biogas. Eccoci qua, buongiorno. Allora, abbiamo appena sentito il suo collega dal Senato.
We've just heard from
Conoscono
your
dal suo punto di
colleague
vista le leve su cui si può agire
what are
per
the levers on
affrontare
which
questo
we can
fenomeno
act
migratori
to
e
consolidate
soprattutto
this pact between decision makers and the world of agriculture.
Intanto voglio ringraziare il Presidente, gli organizzatori,
First of all, I would like to thank the President, the
tutto ciò
organizers,
che ha
CIB,
fatto per portare questa
and
importante
all those who work to
iniziativa
consolidate
in una struttura politica
this important sector. Talking about biogas means talking about one of the most concrete opportunities for the future of Italy.
tre grandi priorità
Three great priorities have to be considered here: energy security, competitiveness, and environmental sustainability, which is one of the main goals to pursue. And that's precisely the point. Biomethane and biogas is no marginal technology. It is not a theoretical challenge. It is a strategic lever that can help us keep together national interest, enhancement of the territories, modernization of the production system. And the first topic is energy security. Over the past few years, we have understood very clearly how fragile a system that is too dependent on the foreign partners is. We have an 88% dependency on fossil fuels, and a big chunk of it is imported. So geopolitical tensions or increase in the cost of energy is actually borne directly by families and enterprises that have to carry this burden. So the decree that was released yesterday is further evidence of this regarding fuels. Biomethane is important for this reason because it is a programmable resource that can be easily integrated and produced in Italy above all. We are not talking about a secondary sector. And this is very simple to understand. More biomethane means less dependency, more resilience of our country system, greater ability to protect our economy. And the second question is the role of agriculture. So we have to be very clear on this. Farmers are no obstacle to the green transition, quite the contrary. They are an essential part of the solution, and biogas and biomethane help the farming world play a very key role, not only producing quality food, but also placing more value on byproducts, residue, transforming that in energy resources. That's the actual circular economy that improves sustainability and guarantees new income opportunity for smaller farms and smaller businesses, and gives a concrete response for the environment. An important portion of emissions from agriculture regards the management of droppings and residues. I think it's important to address this problem with concrete instruments. And that's the third question, that is competitiveness. We must overcome this wrong opposition between sustainability and development. Sustainability, if addressed properly, can be a factor for growth and competitiveness, and biogas and biomethane are showing this. But to do so, we need a clear industrial policy. We know that the enterprises need no slogans, they need clear rules, rapid procedures, and a consistent connection between environmental and energy policies. Our countries has all the necessary conditions to reinforce this sector: technology, expertise, skills. So there's a territorial network that is truly making the difference. And what we can't afford is to slow down this development with bureaucracy, with permits, with authorizations that are often too slow, and this is discouraging investments because every administrative delay is not neutral. It is actually implying costs for our businesses. Biomethane, biogas are proving to be generating value truly for our country. Richness is not concentrated only in few industrial districts. They bring investments to rural areas, to agricultural communities, everywhere in the country. This means more local income, more employment, more opportunities for farming that is multifunctional. There's already a base to start from.
Diciamo che è proprio qui che la politica deve
It is precisely
intervenire
here that policy making must
capace di accompagnare gli investimenti,
intervene to support investments, to bridge the gaps, and to support development in a balanced manner. And there's the method. Biogas and biomethane need a very simple approach, less ideology, more pragmatism. The energy transition is not realized by imposing one technology or by penalizing those who are producing, but it's realized by having all the useful, sustainable, and consistent solutions together. And biomethane um, represents this. It has to be supported not only as an environmental goal, but as a choice of industrial policy. To conclude, biomethane represents one of the soundest solutions to support the transition. When the sector helps place more value on the agricultural sector, well, that sector must be supported with great determination. So that is why I believe that biomethane, biogas are not only a good opportunity, they are a strategic choice. And I will conclude by saying that if we managed to stay in line with Europe that uses agri-food residues insofar as 80%, we use only 25% of it. So if we reach these levels, we would be able to replace 20 billion cubic meters of gas with this energy, biomass, which is already the queen of renewables in Europe. It is also in Italy. Over the past few years, we've seen how it has been considered to be also the Cinderella of renewables. The new vision of this government is to place more value on this technology and to value it at best. And this is the contribution that our country is giving. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, on the one hand, the Senate, on the other, the Chamber of Deputies, and now I'm going back to our guests who are here with us. Welcome back again, and I will begin from you, Mrs. Galli. ANCI represents the National Association of all Italian municipalities, and it operates at the local level. And we've seen this morning the study that was telling us about the potential of the region, Italian regions and provinces. It's a huge potential. But then when you get down to the territory, to the local level, you have to, deal with bureaucracy, the difficulties, so the various the types of red tape. What can we do in this connection? Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to commend you for the agenda of these 2 days that was so interesting and really diversified and rich. And I want to be very honest about this. I was particularly positively struck. So we heard from this morning's presentations about the strategic value at this very time in this country. So the essential and important aspect of strengthening the production of biomethane, and this of course helps us a country become a country that can really make a difference. But then we need to look at reality, because if we talk about things, everything seems fine and nice, but when it comes to creating plants, well, it's it's a totally different matter, because they are created locally, built locally. And I would like to make reference to something that was just presented, the research study. First slide was telling us about knowledge by the population, what they think about biomethane, biogas, and what emerges that more than 50% of people knows nothing about it. The second slide was telling us about what people think, if it's a positive thing or not. And I'm wondering, how can you not be in favor of something that has a positive environmental impact for our communities? So even if people are not really familiar with these themes, should at least become interested or want to know more. Well, this lack of knowledge when it comes to your own backyard, well, brings people to say, no, it's nice, but go somewhere else. And here is where we need to do something and take action, at least in two different ways. The first is trying to act on the knowledge side, and particularly at the level of the municipalities when it comes to issuing authorizations. I'm not talking about bureaucracy. I would first like to focus on the theme of the relationship with the local community. That is something that is very much related to the role of local politicians. Now, beyond the bureaucratic side, which is a problem, but in a different way. So, I think that at that stage, whether we are talking about simplified processes, well, the solution could be to have a stage where you initially involve the municipal bodies in a much stronger way, because then the municipal authorities will involve the local community. This is something to do beforehand for them, for people to get to know the different types of plants, what happens to emissions produced, and to work on the quality of plants and the actions that are going to be carried out. Today we have a technological component that is very high quality in terms of the quality of the production plants built. So this, of course, has a positive impact on territories and people. So if we look at the impact on the people, on the territory, this big involvement of the local community should start immediately, because this would allow you to manage the entire process much more easily when it comes to consensus. Now, this is something that can be carried out by resorting to pilot projects. If we look, for instance, at specific areas where the communities have been involved with the energy communities, some municipal authorities, even small ones, have created this virtuous relationship with their own communities, allowing them, the communities, to reap beneficial outcomes, benefits. So we should try and think how to allow the communities to understand that the plant which is going to be built beyond the fact that is a sustainable plant for the whole country is something that benefits also the local community. We know that in our society individualism is rife, but we should focus much more on the benefits for the local communities. And I'm thinking here of the role of the municipalities, because the municipalities could involve farmers, but also the local communities with biocomposting and other activities that indirectly can allow people to obtain, for instance, tax benefits, as in the case of the waste taxes to be paid by people. So there is a twofold benefit, environmental and financial, trying to benefit the local communities in a way that would, so as to make them more aware of what is being carried out and how this is beneficial for people and the environment, and in many different ways. So as an association, we are ready to contribute to pilot projects that could be implemented in specific areas in order to show people that investments allow the local territory to develop and to become attractive, or at least allowing rural or remote areas to remain where they live, because very often people tend to migrate to other areas where there are more job opportunities, and this would make it possible to fight against the population of remote or inland areas. So we could start thinking about something to do together in order to promote even small local areas or projects involving young people. We are carrying out an initiative with the Prime Minister's office, which is aimed at keeping young people in where they live, where they were born, through incentives in order to establish enterprises and create jobs. So we can choose this sector, we can perhaps work together to tell people how these actions can generate income, make the local economy grow thanks to young people who can then stay in the local territories by introducing quality and innovative interventions. I would like to conclude by looking at an area which is perhaps less attractive, that has to do with compensation. So we shouldn't look at things just from the standpoint of taxation. We should look at these aspects from a win-win perspective if we look at offsetting, like, so this type of thing should be considered as a win-win thing. As I said, bureaucracy, also in the local administrations, of course, is another aspect to consider that can be difficult to address. There is also the topic of skills, which is something that we are lacking sometimes in the local administrations from a quantitative and qualitative standpoint, because sometimes employees are not able to carry out a certain action at bureaucratic level. But we should move back to that regulatory process that cannot simply be of the top-down type, but rather we should think that strategic interventions for the local territories should be simplified, procedures should be simplified in order to overcome bureaucratic red tape, working on the priorities for the country and streamlining all this. Thank you. Thank you for your words. So on the one hand, there is simplification, which you pointed out as being essential from the national to the local level. And on the other hand, the next generation is another essential theme. Yesterday, we met the young people of Farming from Future. That next generation of farmers is already speaking a different language, which is that of the future. And in this connection, I would like to ask Giulio Galera to step in, because Lombardy is one of the leading regions in this sector. We've seen figures in the biogas and biomethane sector. So what type of advice would you like to give today's and tomorrow's decision makers in order to overcome the difficulties that today we still have. Well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me. It's an excellent opportunity for exchange and growth, I hope, overall, because we heard that we cannot but share all the things that was told us by the different speakers at the level of the institutions, EU level and Italian level. We heard our political colleagues, political work colleagues. You are the example of that virtuous ecological transition which is taking place, that circular economy based on facts and reality, where we are not just hearing empty words. But of course, we all need to do something. And I was thinking about this as I was listening to our colleagues. Where we must set aside that rhetoric that has been so detrimental to our continent, where ecological transition was taking place with zero cost for citizens, and telling us that by 2050 we are all going to use electric cars. So all we had to do was, buy an electric car rather than a normal engine car, and replace plastic bottles with metal bottles that we would all take around. Then we would create the circular economy at zero cost for everybody, and we would just, carry out new emission, zeroing on emissions and carrying out the ecological transition, and that, you know, would be beneficial to all. But reality, of course, is a very different thing. That rhetoric came to an end, and it really had a negative impact on the economy of this continent, just thinking that we could switch to something else and that was it. That, of course, has had a very different and negative impact on the motor sector in Europe. I mean, there isn't just electricity, we are now thinking of different solutions such as biofuels. Anyway, all this seemed to be something that would come at zero cost for citizens. This is not the case, of course. If we all want to really introduce improvements at the environmental level, which is essential, well, this implies that we must take responsibilities, and it must also entail sacrifices on the part of citizens. And the local administrators at low levels, of course, not just the mayors and local administrators, but all administrators must do something, play their part. If we want to become independent from Russian gas or from the geopolitical impacts that we are feeling at the national level, if we want a true circular economy, if we really want to support our farming sector, agriculture, protecting them from the impacts of Mercosur and other things, well, we must look at innovation. And we must highlight and explain all this. So a plant can have an impact from a physical perspective. There may be some small issues that can be solved from the standpoint of smells, etc. But, we know that technology can overcome such problems, but you cannot, have an attitude of resistance or fear. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. I was thinking about energy storage. Some days ago, I met this mayor who was asking for this storage unit to be moved away, and when asked why, he said, well, because it's placed within another municipality, it's not my own. I mean, this is not the approach we can adopt. Of course, we need communication, good communication, and the ability to make people understand how a society evolves. And so we must all work on these matters, on these themes, because we are all aware of the importance importance of biogas and biomethane plants in promoting energy transition, but of course we need to invest also in communication and training. The national the NRRP was really an opportunity. This is how I see it. It was an opportunity to support a sector which is not made up by those who till the field and sow seeds, but we are rather talking about people who have to grapple with problems such as, lack of water, using less water and be more productive, and that circular economy that uses animal husbandry waste instead of throwing it into the environment, creating further problems, but turning it into digest state. Of course, all this must be supported, and the National Recovery and Resilience Plan and RRP provided a huge amount of resources that also allowed us, for instance, to change tractors, buying biomethane fueled tractors supporting plants, or the refurbishment of historical farms that were in ruin. I am the president of a commission, and I know so many things about all the initiatives undertaken thanks to NRRP. When this comes to an end, though, of course, we must find an alternative solution, because this will allow us to achieve all these goals. So cohesion funds, well, undoubtedly, this is a way. Cohesion funds that must be continued to be managed by the regional authorities, because the regional authorities know who needs support and who is working virtuously at the local level, not by resorting to algorithms that people want to deploy from the north to the south of this country, which, as we know, is very diverse. So, and there may be other state interventions. Well, the time is not easy, but Cassa Depositi and Prestiti and state resources can be put in place if we think that this is something that is useful to the nation, also to achieve energy independence. Then we must put in some resources, and big ones as it is. And then there is the theme of authorization permits. In this case, too, the NRRP was very important and innovative, because simplification processes were introduced. As 1,000 experts referred to were a very interesting key, because consultants and experts working hand in hand with farmers knew where the glitches were, where difficulties to obtain authorizations resided when it comes to renewable energy plants, etc. So they were very helpful. They were helpful and helped us solve big glitches and bottlenecks, streamlining procedures. Maybe they just produce small solutions, but that will resolve things, reducing red tape and times by months. So this is a road that should be continued to be pursued, and this relationship with sector players should not just support them financially, but through their advice, etc. We must understand how to make things speedier. So this is a relationship that should be maintained, but then there is also the problem of the skills of the local administrators. We have this demographic winter in this country. So even though we were to have the money, we cannot expect that in a few years in every municipality we're going to triple the number of skilled staff. This is difficult in an extraordinary country as Italy is, which, however, has limitations, because in 50% of Italian municipalities has less than 5,000 inhabitants. 70% of Italian municipalities has less than 5,000 inhabitants, and 50% has less than 1,000. So the staff in municipalities are too few, and they do not possess the skills concerning what it takes to build a biogas plant. I mean, they cannot be helpful. So if we think that what we have talked about is strategic, then we need to understand where to concentrate decision-making centers in terms of authorization issuing. So we need to make an effort in this direction. I think that the provincial authorities and metropolitan authorities should be promoted and grow and expanded. So we need to create some centers with staff that is qualified and capable of managing authorizations that would be able to serve, an entire area in order to meet the needs of the municipalities, because of course the municipalities have to decide what is going to be done in the municipality itself, but then they need support by skilled experts. So you have demonstrated you are excellent entrepreneurs and experts, and we must translate all this into concrete steps, not just providing money, but even providing skills and competencies, etc., so that a sector like this can be developed thanks to the provision of skilled and fast answers to the questions that are asked. So thank you for providing us this picture, telling us about what happens on the local authorities side. So thank you to both. And before we move to the end of this conference, we go back to where we started yesterday morning with this earth power. So human beings have always tried to imagine their future, and we've realized that in order to truly build it, in addition to looking far, we needed to be grounded, to be realistic, and starting from what lies below our feet, Earth. The Earth that nourishes, regenerates, supports, that requires respect, that needs to be taken care of and so the Earth was a surface, but also something changed. It's not just a boundary. In the past 20 years, thanks to biogas, we started looking at land in a different way. We learned new skills, built new abilities, and created new sectors. And we've understood that once skills become systematized, they also entail greater and greater responsibilities, not just vis-à-vis the Earth, but also the environment, our community, our countries, and towards the future of farming. Because from responsibility and accountability, we go to the next step, and that is action. The action of those who innovate in the field every day to produce food, fodder, and energy, reducing impacts and creating new opportunities. It is here that doing becomes something else, and it is through action. Innovation takes ground and becomes the future. Today, our Earth, our land is not just a surface, it's earth power. 20 years of farming future that continue today here together. 20 years of farming future from ability to action. So let us celebrate these 20 years with our last three guests, whom I'm inviting to the podium, starting with Gabriele Carenini, Regional President of CIA Piedmont. Welcome. Then we have the President of Confagricoltura, Massimiliano Giansanti. Welcome again. And the President of Coldiretti, Ettore Prandini. Welcome. So, we are very happy to have you here at Biogas Italy 2026. I'm going to propose a couple of rounds of comments and opinions. Let us perhaps begin by analyzing the present, looking to the future. Let us start from this first 20 years of farming future. We've seen so many figures this morning telling us about an important production potential for biogas and biomethane. And I would like to start with you, Mr. Carenini. So how do you see the present, so the current status quo, and what is your opinion as far as this first part is concerned? First of all, thank you for inviting me and us, I would like to bring you the greetings of my national president, Cristiano Fili, whom I'm going to try and represent here. But I've heard and listened with great attention to all presentations. Already the title of this conference, Earth Power, is really an excellent title. We are going through a very complex situation as far as energy goes in our country, particularly in the past few days. We have realized, not just as entrepreneurs, but also as citizens, what is happening. So I'm saying right away that every cubic meter of gas that we can produce is, very beneficial to our country, not just for the farming world or local areas, but all citizens in general. Another thing I heard is the word territory. Well, farming can be and must be the protagonist of all this journey path, and I am sure that plants and farming must move on hand in hand. There mustn't just be farming adapting to plants or the other way around. These two players must move forward together, thinking strategically for the future. Do not just grow crops. We also produce energy, because from our waste, energy can be produced. So we have the ability to do all this, and I quite frankly, also because I come from a region where there are plans. If we hadn't had them, my region, Piedmont, would have had huge difficulties. So we must continue along these lines and continue promoting synergies together to try and produce as much as possible, doing so in a sustainable way, giving information to people, and the survey was very important in showing the current situation compared with the past. So we must work on the public opinion, decision makers, who then must make decisions, though, eventually, and take responsibility. And so together, we must create synergies for the future. This is where I would like to stop. Mr. Giansanti, President Giansanti, so what is your view, opinion on the current situation, and what do you think about what we started discussing this morning? Thank you and good morning. First of all, happy birthday. Well, 20 years is a first important step in the life of this consortium, which we have seen right from its establishment, that we have accompanied, and that today is with us in a very delicate phase. I don't really like the word transition, because per se is a word that refers to a journey going towards a not necessarily well-defined direction. But this is not the case with us, because we want to produce renewable energy sources for farming, from farming. This is something we have very clear in mind as an activity that diversifies the income sources for a farm which is very much connected to the economic fabric, and also in connection with ISR more noble themes such as sustainability and the environment, etc. And in these 20 years, from biogas to biomethane today, and the production of sun power, and we have to decide if this has to be produced on the roofs or in the fields. I mean, within the associations there are different positions, but anyway, for us the production of renewable energy is essential, and it is also something that is very much part and parcel with farming. But in case legislators didn't have this clear in mind, well, the production of energy today is essential vis-a-vis the strategic supplies. And since COVID, since the pandemic, we realized that we cannot depend on somebody else, because as long as things are going well, everything is fine. But then when things are not going so well, depending on market conditions, is something that makes life very difficult for everyone. So today, the production of renewable energy sources in Italy represents 10% of the country's energy mix. We represent 10% in a production which is 100% made in Italy. The production of power from gas, from oil, etc., is something that is not something that we produce. But in the case of our fuel, well, it's another story, and that is why we should be protected. And as far as the decree on energy bills, as far as it goes, so we know it's so important. So we must maintain, of course, electric power, which is essential, even though not everybody can be electrified. And very often, I mean, those who cannot lose electricity will have to use gas. So this is why it is so important. The companies that have invested in this field in the past years are big companies. They are sustainable and they possess resources. So the Italian model today is something that we are trying to transfer to Brussels as well. And it is important that at the European level we start speaking about bioeconomy in a significant way. And of course, we're also working all together in order to try and improve the theme revolving around fertilizers, because it's the third part of innovation. So farming production, the production of energy, and then the production of fertilizers is another thing that can be obtained through our plants. So this can be, the full cycle in an activity which is essential and which is our goal today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giansanti. President Prandini, we've seen over the past 2 days how with biogas done right and biomethane, the soil is really key to the Italian system in such a complex time like the one we are going through right now. Well, the geopolitical setting has raised a new awareness with respect to a short-sighted vision that we used to have. Giulio Gallera was very clear in expressing that earlier. Europe was pretty short-sighted. It was therefore simpler to trivialize certain claims or even delocalize production sectors. If we think of energy and of the energy sector, we look at the trends of the costs that we have borne after the outbreak of the Ukrainian conflict. Well, we would realize that what's happening today is even more severe. So we are in a condition now where we need to have a new awareness of what we can realize in Europe. And that's the first political reflection we should make. And we have to exchange views with our institutions. It would be easy to blame policymakers. We don't want to take care of the obvious. We want to support our decision makers, regionally, nationally, or at the EU level, to lead the way for future challenges. And talking about future challenges, let's not forget about the latest decree that at first has jeopardized the certainties that we have built over the past few years, the guaranteed average price, the guaranteed minimum price, which we believe is essential. We are pleased that Minister Fratin has amended the draft proposal. He said we will get there in a year's time. I would like to add that if there's truly the political will, let's do it right away with the parliamentary changes that are needed. Amendments were presented that are giving concrete answers. Well, now these answers should be obtained. An entrepreneur has a certainty when we are making an investment. If that model has worked, why should we discontinue that? So I think we should continue incentivizing as we have done, because right now we have to be involved in the energy sector. It must be an entrepreneurial choice to transform the current biogas plants into biomethane, but it must be something imposed for those who have made these choices. I believe that another important work should be carried out in Europe with the Vice President of the EU, Raffaele Fitto. We managed to have 2 more years to accompany businesses. Well, this is what we would like to achieve, because regardless of the entrepreneurial will, invest in a biomethane plant, there's a problem. We don't have enough material, not physical material, to build the plants. So we either transform them into a missed opportunity, or we make changes so that this could continue being an opportunity of growth and development. I've mentioned Giulio Gallera because I believe that what we have managed to do in Lombardy must become an example for all the other Italian regions, where we have simplified the bureaucracy to realize the plans by building a mechanism whereby municipal governments, respecting their autonomy, cannot have a say with respect to the concessions when they are already been authorized. Otherwise, it would just be red tape, causing further delays and thereby undermining the challenges that we have managed to rise up to. We have talked about the guaranteed minimum price, but let me also add one thing. Let's think all together in the common interest of our entrepreneurs, where I believe that the question of digestate is vital for the future of our business and our businesses, because it is strictly linked to a geopolitical interpretation in the short-sightedness of Europe in closing down production plants for fertilizers and being at risk, not only given the increase in price that will be certain, but also being at risk in terms of availability. Additional taxation, for example, the CBAM that has caused an exacerbation of the whole context. Well, digestate can be part of the solution to these problems, thereby creating a mechanism. We have designed with CREA, with the ministries, and we have finally managed to raise new awareness in Europe. Digestate is now considered as an opportunity. Now the timeline must make the difference. So the faster, the better conditions will be created for digestate to be used, exactly as the chemicals are used. And we will finally be able to talk about sustainability. I don't want to mention my region of origin once again, but in Lombardy we have done another very smart thing. We have trained new professional profiles, where I believe that also in the sector of renewables, we should create a mechanism whereby young people are trained to acquire skills that companies will need in the future. That's the best way to guarantee a generational turnover, but also to have a new awareness with respect of the economic value we could get from the investments and the challenges and the competition, seeing agriculture as a pillar of the future of the country.
Grazie Prandini. Allora prendo spunto proprio dalle parole del Presidente.
Thank you. I will draw inspiration from Prandini's words. Well, with respect to digestate, I think there are common intents here. So I think we all agree and we can act as a team and concentrate our efforts. And there's the question of the future to rise up to the challenges of the next few years. Yes, absolutely. Well, farmers over the past years have risen up to many challenges. Challenges that seem to be unattainable in the past, but with our ability of being flexible, of being resilient, we managed to reach very important realities that are setting examples of innovation and technology. Um, the farming of today is not the same as it was 30 years ago. We have to find a new awareness, and the public opinion should do the same with respect to the reality of agriculture, because agriculture for this country can truly be an important source of energy, for example, not only to produce food but to preserve the land. The rural areas that have been mentioned in the past 2 days wouldn't be here if there wasn't agriculture. It's agriculture that is keeping them going. So we have to be ready to rise up to new challenges, and with respect to energy, we are available to work on common strategies that can lead agriculture to be a driver and a driving force of the energy procurement for a country, because we are not producing residues, we are producing energy, generating energy. Giansanti, I will go back to you. Well, this driving force, this land as a driving force, that of course is necessary to rise up to difficult challenges, the crises that we are facing today. So, how can agriculture draw inspiration from experiences like Biogas Italy to meet the challenges of the future? Well, first of all, well, through videos and information dissemination activities for those who are dealing with renewables, but for everyone. I remember the agricultural model of the future, thinking of agriculture not only as a business producing food, but a system at the center of the economic system. Agriculture in its entirety has many purposes. So, not only food, but also social implications. And in the dialogue with institutions, we identify solutions, and along with them, we must build a model that is based on the common agricultural policy that must be for productive agriculture, so agriculture that is producing for the market. A market that means a global market. We will have yet another agreement, maybe a wrong one, with Australia. Once again, machinery for food production will be object of negotiation, without thinking that the world has priorities today, and food and energy are two factors where no compromises can be made. Agriculture must not be seen as a non-economic activity. So some people don't even consider agriculture to be an economic activity, whereas I believe to be an entrepreneur, precisely like you. So in that business activity, we have to reinforce the production capacity and our competitiveness, and we have to make business more competitive. And this can be done only by focusing on energy costs. And for those who generate renewable energy, it's key. And of course, agricultural machinery will be key, and I see a few representatives here, and also the development of biomethane. Biomethane is not only a goal to reach in the logic of diversification of procurement sources, but it's also a way to bring costs down. So we will consolidate the production of renewables that will characterize the mm, production of generation of services. I come from an important meeting on carbon farming um, that is being currently held in Padua, and there were a number of scenarios presented there, and scenarios means probability, likelihood, and I saw that the rise in global temperature uh, will definitely have an impact on agriculture over the next few years. So, if those forecasts happen to be true, of course, agriculture will be a priority for northern countries and no longer for southern countries. So, unless we um, change course now, and we focus on the integrated idea of agriculture as part of the circular economy, we won't be able to survive, and all the economic systems should be supported by agriculture. But also the social environmental pillar could be represented by agriculture. So that's the legacy of the future, and we need to work. So I agree with what was just said. Decarbonization depends on the ability of acting as a system. So it's okay, let's work on CBAM, but we have gold in our own backyard and we are not using it. So we should work on the nitrates directive because agriculture is the future. Thank you. Thank you, John Santi. So let's stay here. Agriculture and the future. We talk about legacy. We've talked about legacy after the end of the Paralympic Games in Milan Cortina. Then the Expo in Milan happened 10 years ago with a long-term legacy. And back then people said food for life, energy for the future. What about the Italian model? Uh, the Italian model can be a source of inspiration, again, not only for the continent but for the planet. Well, I believe that the biggest mistake we could ever make is that of following a logic of globalization, so standardized agriculture. I believe that Italy can be a winner when it stands out for the quality of its products, thereby positioning them in the in the top ranges at a global level when it comes to distribution. And the reason is pretty clear because even if we are the best, we will never be able to compete with numbers because there are countries and places whose size is humongous compared with ours. Massimiliano mentioned Australia. Well, a farm in Australia is big, as big as an Italian region, so of course there's no competition there. But Italy is a model, and if we can combine innovation with digitization and data management, we um, will be able to convey what we truly are. So, the most sustainable agriculture at the global level, everyone knows it, at least amongst us, but outside this room, no one knows it. So, if we do not expose our value in order to have a recognition in economic terms, we would not be doing our job, and we shouldn't blame any others. So every day I try to think of how we could get better and to improve. If it's true that digitization, data management, innovation are going to be the future, then we will have to urge our administrations and institutions to make sure that the 4.0 can be recovered. It has a minimum budget now. over the next few hours, the enforcement decree for resources, the early preliminary resources, will be passed. But we have to guarantee continuity over the years because our farms need planning. They can be supported with incentives that will help us to look at future challenges. Well, there are no entrepreneurs that are ready to do so. If people think that agriculture is not a natural undertaking, well, I think if entrepreneurs faced half of the difficulties that farms have experienced, they would have changed jobs right away. So we have to be considered as a model of resilience, ability, entrepreneurship, resourcefulness, vision, people that manage to defend our culture, our identity, our biodiversity that everyone envies, creating the conditions to have logistics on board, uh, processing, distribution, and all the sectors that produce full farms for an overall value of 707 billion, 4 million employees, and an historical record in 2025 in terms of exports. You mentioned the Expo in Milan. 10 years ago, the value of our exports was less than half than what it is today. And when we play matches that are so challenging, that and when we are able to plan, I'm convinced that the agri-food sector is still the strategic asset that will guarantee the future of our country. Of course, this goes hand in hand with the question of energy, and energy must be a certainty. It's been a few years that it's been a few years now that I've attended CIB, so let's see what we could do to guarantee continuity to the existing plans. We must set aside this logic. We must ask our businesses, we must make sure that our businesses have certainties. When we embark on a journey, that journey must not be questioned. And if questioned, is only to have it improved, not to cancel it. Since we are celebrating the 20 years of the CIB, 20 years ago, I was elected for the first time as a provincial president of Coldiretti. And there's a story I would like to share with you. In 2007, I was invited to Cremona. Um, I think I was the only one belonging to Coldiretti yet there. There were other 15 entrepreneurs, and I wondered, oh, why the hell am I here? Joking aside, it is important to always guarantee the will to listen and to have an exchange. Half of those entrepreneurs that were there on that occasion are members of Coldiretti, because dialogue and exchange of views is the basis for everything. And when there's dialogue and exchange of views, we are giving concrete answers to the needs of our entrepreneurs. The CIB was a great insight and a great idea, and CIB and other associations must become a common value of exchange and growth for the future of our businesses.
Grazie Prandini. E allora,
Thank you, President Prandini. So before we leave, and as I do every year, I would like you to give us a message of hope to address to the next generations of farmers who every year participate in this conference. I've seen them grow, and year after year, you see them also grow, not just physically but professionally. Sometimes they're very young. They become members of study groups, and yesterday we had our friends from Farming for Future. So please, a message of encouragement for the next generations. Mr. Carini, well, um, in farming, we've always had so much energy. Well, let us continue to have it all together to remain, in this path. Mr. Giansanti, well, I don't think we need to encourage farmers, because when we speak about earth power, we just need to continue working as we have up until today, but we will continue to work and have another 20 years of great successes. Mr. Prandini, your turn. Well, I think we should all be committed to promote generational turnover, because if we are not able to involve young people in the farming sector, well, then we run the risk of being seen, as it happened in the past, as a sector that has no future prospects. Young people are extraordinary in terms of their intelligence, and we must, go beyond this idea that even some ministers had in the past of thinking of these young people as, idle young people who don't want to do anything. If you see them like this, it means that you do not know young people. I think that young people are our future, absolutely. And the more we involve them in our companies, the more we will be challenged in terms of national policies, but particularly looking to the challenges of the global level that can, affect our world, but that we can turn into something positive thanks to the products that we produce. So thank you for your words. Please remain here. I'm going to go to the stage Piero Gattoni for his final remarks in these 2 days of Biogas Italy, and to say bye-bye to our guests. Piero, over to you. Thank you. Thank you, Filippo. And so we have come to the end of these 2 rich days, of exciting days in many respects, and we are going to live with something more, well, richer than we were before. And this is another important asset in these 20 years of CIB. These 20 years made us want to know more, grow, challenge ourselves. And I will begin from the beginning. In these 20 years, we have developed a context. Mr. Di Grena from the Chamber of Deputies said something quite clear. Renewable energy sources are the future as an infrastructure, not only to produce sustainable energy from an environmental perspective, but particularly for Europe, this is a strategic infrastructure for our security. And he said that overall, in the bioenergy field, we are not doing as much as we should. It's a percentage that should be multiplied by 5. Bioenergy should include biogas, biomethane, wood, biomass, which is something that farming has always done, because before fossil fuels, as we remember, we always produced energy in some form. Now, in this context, also the words of Mrs. Morese from FAO made us understand how food and energy can be produced together and must be produced together, I would add. And we as entrepreneurs, but first and foremost, as European citizens, we have the moral duty to continue asking Europe to govern this phase, never giving up its leading role in this new model. We mustn't do that. Particularly, we mustn't do that at a time when there are specific situations such as this that run the risk of making us lose ground on and return to previous models. We need to work. We need to work at the level of Italy, at the European level. We have the CEO of the European Biogas Association and DG Energy from the Commission. And this testifies to the fact that biomethane today has become, within the Commission strategy, well, a reference point, an important element for development, but it wasn't easy to get where we are. It happened after years and years of toil, of work, and this is another theme that has, that we have shared as a consortium. So the idea that our work should be carried out not just at the national level but also at the European level. And we spoke with the protagonists who who saw the development of biogas done right. And the video was talking about earth power, responsibility, accountability, action. Well, I think that the responsibility that we had as farms and industrial farm was to build a model around this idea of doing things right. And this is undoubtedly one of the most courageous choices we made, as well as the winning choice that we made in the past 20 years. This model allowed us to establish positive relationships, and I would like to thank Emilio Gatto, who spoke on behalf of the Agriculture Ministry, the head of department of the Ministry of the Environment and Energy Security, and I thank them, the president of the Biofuel Commission, I thank him as well. And we have had Minister Pichetto Fratin, who came to greet us after he had to participate in a Council of Ministers. So I really must thank him for showing us such attention. But what do we mean by all this? So there may be difficulties, and we've witnessed this with the utilities bill. There will be difficulties, but there are also good things if we understand the importance of supporting biomethane, particularly its use in the industrial sector and the transportation sector. Of course, all these aspects should be promoted. There are some measures that today could allow us to make the most of our production potential. And then there's the market, and I think that, as Angelo Baronchelli was saying this morning, our choice, he was talking about what we said to each other while we were getting here. Anyway, our decision to avoid simple solutions in favor of building a market with the hard-to-abate sector is a choice that shows something. We realize that our companies can no longer do without anaerobic digestion, because it's not just a matter of competitiveness. It's just something that has changed our sector in a positive way, particularly in the case of those companies that have created that fabric representing the real starting point from this in terms of infrastructure. So let us focus on communication, on training, education, also trying and understand what we should be doing in the next 20 years. And the U-Trend survey showed this to us. We must work, communicate, be better at sharing what we do in positive terms, what positive things that we do. And I would like to thank Anci and Mrs. Conley, because undoubtedly together we could work on pilot projects and build not just a different communication, but also ways to understand, for instance, offsetting burdens and aspects that can be turned into something positive, showing that our farms, our enterprises have a positive impact on the local territory, on the environment. And then the last panel, of course, it's the main one in a sense. It's the main panel because here we have the three farming associations and their presidents. And I would also like to greet Gabriele. So here we have the presidents of the three leading associations, sector associations. Ettore and Massimiliano reminded us of some aspects specifically. I remember in 2019, there was a first meeting that we held in Milan with then Minister Centinaio, and I remember this meeting in very, very positive terms, because I feel that over the years we built something, we worked on something that allowed farming to come to play a central role in our sector. So we all did our share. Everybody contributed to building an increasingly more appropriate and specific answer. As in the case of the utility bill decree, we found ourselves in a difficult situation, but without this union in terms of our vision, I think we can say that even though sectors are different, we still have a common vision. Without this, we would not have been as effective as we were. So, for the next 20 years, I would like to make a request to these three associations. Our sector was able to put together, I'm always asking something, also Minister Pichetto said, so you always, I'm always, asking for something. Anyway, our is a world sector that was capable of uniting different sectors and worlds, and the biggest alliance created was that between the industrial and the farming worlds. Well, today we also have so many companies that are investing in our sector, and they should be accompanied in a positive way so that these investments become a territorial value, that something that adds value at the local level. So I feel it's important to highlight how that anaerobic digestion in farming will play a role only if it is managed by the farming world itself. So I'm extending this request to you for you to support this idea. I am happy to say that I was complimented by many for the work that we carried out in the past 20 years. I'm very proud, in fact, about this. And since this is Father's Day, I would like to thank my father, my own father, because if I had the chance of challenging myself and make different experiences beyond my own farm, well, it's thanks to his generosity. And then I find that never, as with these results, these results are results that need to be shared with everybody, even with those who simply contributed by becoming members of our associations, feeling a part of something, because this has allowed us to carry out investments in a perspective that wasn't just limited to our own companies, but as Angelo said, something in the interest of the entire country. And there is another person I would like to mention before we finish, and it's Ville Bocelli, who was our director and who was the person who set the stage, established the foundation for all the work that we conducted with our young people. Willer had two characteristics that we continue to try and find in all the people who want to work with the CIB: intelligence and generosity. So these are two pillars on which we have built a visionary path journey, keeping our feet well rooted in the ground, in the earth. So thank you. I would like to call our team to come over. Thank you, Caterina, Laura, Giulia, Simona, Francesca, Emanuele, Lorella, Angela. Thank you to all the CIB team, and see you next year. Thank you so much.